Hello again, it's Mr. RG Stuff here, and I'm back in the workshop with my second video about this Tonofox soundbox that I'm restoring. And there's so much that I could say about this. I don't really know where to start, so I've sort of laid out all the components, and I'm just hoping I'm going to be able to remember everything. And I've got a couple of cameras running, so hopefully my hands won't get in the way too much. Essentially though, this is the main body here. I've not done a great deal to this. I haven't cleaned the ring up at the front, but otherwise I've cleaned it all up. And I've also cleaned up all the metal components. So basically I've used a Dremel with a small wire brush just to take all the rust off and the sort of loose paint. And this bit here was actually stuck onto this collar bit here, and I used some heat to get that off, and I don't actually need that bit. And what else? And there's the needle bar there, and that's been all cleaned up and straightened. And you can see I've actually got a diaphragm on it, and that's a 3D printed diaphragm actually. Unfortunately, the original mica diaphragm is just completely stuffed, and I don't have a spare one. My number 4 diaphragm is too big by about 2mm, and these ones which I made for my 3D printed sound boxes are also just not the right size. What else? All the screws pretty much on this, apart from the screw that holds the diaphragm on, are actually 9BA, and I use my handy tap and die set to basically work that out. So for the back panel, the sort of 3 screws around here, only one of them was actually the original, so I've ordered some, and I've just ordered some little brass ones. And these are just slightly too long, so I've cut using a punch and a big sort of washer, plastic washer here, might even be neoprene, but something like that. I've cut that or punched that to make some tiny little washers so that they're not too big. The other screw that was particularly missing was the thumb screw, and I've made a couple, but that's the better of the two. And that fits, and that again is 9BA. So I turned that on the lathe. That wasn't actually too hard to do. It was my first attempt there. Not great, not as great, but I mean, even that one worked. It wasn't too bad. The gaskets I've replaced with this neoprene rubber stuff, so that they should be okay. They're not actually the same length, the 2 gaskets, so I've had to carefully measure them and cut them. And this sort of rubber pad here, which is not very flexible, I've replaced that with some of this sort of foam craft material. The first one I cut just by using this as a template, but it didn't really come out particularly well, so I measured it a bit better, cut and punched a better one there. So that's most of it. What haven't I talked about? I think the only thing I forgot to mention possibly was for the diaphragm. I printed 3D printed diaphragms before quite successfully. I do want to put in a transparent one or a mica one. This one is not bad. It didn't print as well as I'd hoped. In fact, none of the ones I tried printed quite as well as I hoped, so I've actually coated the back with PVA glue to try and seal it a bit better. And for cutting this material here, I use this little contraption here which I 3D printed, and this is actually for cutting the tube for the 3D printer, so the Bowden tube for taking the filament down to the nozzle on a 3D printer, or some 3D printers. That's what that's for, but it's also very good for cutting gasket material. So what I'm going to do now is actually put the whole thing back together again. essentially I've got to put in the lower gasket, and then I've got to put the diaphragm on top. You can't actually attach the needle bar when the diaphragm is in, because there is no central hole in the back of this sound box. It's just got the 3 little holes for the volume control system. But actually this works quite well. Actually, you attach it on like that, and then you can attach it in like that, and it lines it up pretty well actually. It would be an utter pain to actually put the diaphragm in and then try to line it up sufficiently so you could actually get the needle bar in the middle. And it also means that I've been able to straighten and bend the needle bar in such a way such that it's actually lined up. I don't know if that's in camera shot. So it's actually in the right position, because the needle bar was really badly bent, and although I bent it back pretty much okay, it was only when I put the diaphragm on that I realised that it still needed a bit of tweaking. So anyway, I'm going to put it back together again now and give it a shot in the gramophone. Okay, now I'm going to start with the gasket. This is the lower gasket, because this is definitely going to come to pieces again, or at least I hope it will do, because I want to put a different diaphragm in. I'm not going to worry too much about joining them or sealing them or anything like that. I'm also not going to wax the central screw either, which I probably should do, but we'll go with it just like it is for the minute. So lower diaphragms in. This actually lines up quite nicely. Just get them started. Okay. Right, well that will probably do for that. Sounds encouraging. And on the back, we start with this bit here. Now, when I took this to pieces, this was in this sort of position here, and this was round like this, and I thought there was a real problem, because basically I couldn't get the screws to fit. Only one screw would fit, and I thought that's the reason why the previous owner had used one screw, one wonky wood screw, and I'd lost the screw. But essentially the problem is that that lever doesn't go there, that lever goes there. And then the screws fit because that goes in like that, and all the holes line up. So let's put the mat on again. It goes on like that, and then we need the right screw. Which is that one there. Well, they did like their 9BA size in the factory that made this. Now, this is possibly German, and you might think, well, why 9BA, which is a British standard in Germany? Possibly because it's a metric standard, and Germany was metric even at the point that this was made, which was probably no later than the mid-1920s, although one website actually suggests it's 1910, which does seem a bit early for me. The other reason is that the BA standard is actually based on a Swiss standard, and it's possible that actually the screws on these aren't BA, but they just happen to be very close. So anyway, that's on OK. That goes on like that. And these brass screws are a little long, so I've made these rubber washers, which I think is not a bad idea anyway, actually. That might actually help the performance of the soundbox. So we just put these in. Try not to chew up the heads of the screws. I do have some spares actually. I think 10 of these cost me £2.85. So they're 28.5 each. I could have turned them on the lathe, but to be honest, I thought it was going to be a real pain to get the heads the right, or to look the same, so I thought it just wasn't worth the trouble. Although having made the thumb screw, I'm now thinking I probably should have just made these back screws as well. It wouldn't have been that hard. Anyway, so they're in. They probably could be tighter. Right. Something's catching. Volume control's not moving smoothly. Okay, well, as it was catching a bit, I've decided to take the back off and just have a look at the mechanism again. So you can see how the holes and the slots sort of engage. That actually seems to be okay, so I'm not quite sure why that was catching. So let's just put this back on again and put these little screws in. Right, well, all the screws are in the back now, and the volume control lever works just fine. So I'm just going to put the thumb screw in. And if I put a needle in as well, this is a little soft tone one. You should be able to see that the needle bar is actually quite well lined up. So that should play just fine. I'm also going to use this adapter that I made in a previous video for a different soundbox, because the tube on the back is a 19mm one, and this doesn't actually fit any of my gramophones, but with this on it will actually fit my HMV 162, which I'm going to use. Now this isn't going to be a normal sort of comparison like I usually do, but just a demonstration of the soundbox in action and the volume control. I'm going to use a record that you may be familiar with. It's one I've used in lots of previous tests. It's Jollity Farm. This is a soft tone needle. Doors are open a bit. That's the quietest volume. So you can increase the volume as it's playing, which is a really neat feature. So that's max volume with a soft tone needle.
Down on Jollity Farm, regular in habit, the calf begins to crow, and the old buck rabbit says, I'm a doody-a-do. All the little ducks go quack, 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 the cows all moo, the bull does too, everyone says, how you do, down on Jollity Farm. You won't find much jollity, though you may walk a mile. The sun shines all the while, you cannot help but smile. Farmer's name is Jolly Boy, he's laughing all the day. And when you see his missus, you'll be glad you came that way. All the little pigs, they grunt and howl, the cats meow, the dogs bow wow. Everybody makes some row down on Jollity Farm. All the little birds go.
So I don't think it sounds too bad actually, and actually I'm just very pleased it works.
Down on Jollity Farm, when the dew is soaking, the frogs sing any note, you will hear one croaking.
Okay, well, I'm not done with this soundbox yet. Obviously I'm very pleased it works, and it's come up quite nicely, but I do want to put a better diaphragm in it. The 3D printed ones don't look good, and I don't think sound the best. Well, I know they don't sound the best, but I've not been able to find a mica one. It's about 52, 53 millimeters, but the H&V number 4 one certainly doesn't fit. It's just too big. Anyway, that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and if you have enjoyed this video, then please subscribe to Mr. RG Stuff. Thank you.